Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a terrific guest. This woman is an educator, a woman of God, an evangelist, a leader in our community, and just a downright great person who's fun to talk to and fun to be around. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy our time with her today. I am speaking, of course, about Felicia Elzy. Felicia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Parker. I'm very humbled and delighted that you invited me to be here.
Well, I've been looking forward to interviewing you. I've been a big fan. As you know, you and my wife work together and go way back. And I've always admired your family. They're some of the foremost educators in our land. It's one neat thing about, the Tangipahoa area is that we have these families that run deep in education. And yours is one of them. I think of the Mabrys and the Josephs and, so many more. And you just do a great job. So before we get into your career in education and the great things you're doing now, like STEM Cafe and Educators Clubhouse and all that, if you don't mind, just begin by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, Parker. Yes, again, I am Felicia Elzy. And during my career, some may remember me as Felicia Jones when I was married, especially the students that I taught during that time, because of course I was Miss Jones in the
Right.
school system. At this particular time, about me, I have a lifelong career in education. I feel like I was born into it, as you said, because we do have deep roots in education, but we also have deep spiritual roots, which I will talk about again. I have two adult sons. They are also products of Ponchatoula High School as well. And then they went on to a private Christian college in Jackson, Tennessee, named Lane College, where they both received their bachelor's degrees in music as well as in education in 2020.
Wow.
Now they are in Boston. One is in Boston. Both were able to get accepted into Boston conservatories. And so one actually is up there attending a Boston conservatory, Lungy. It's a private conservatory. And then the other one was accepted into Berkeley's conservatory. However, he looked at me, he said, Ma, I think I want a little break. I want to travel and do some
Yeah.
other things. And I say that was perfectly fine.
Now, the Berkeley Conservatory, that's out in California?
But this is the one in Boston. They have one in
Oh, it's in
California,
Boston.
but they have one in
Okay.
Boston as well.
Okay.
So the one that is attending, he's actually attending Lungy Conservatory.
Okay.
Lungy is a product of Bard College out of New York. It's a very elite private school in New York, and so they decided to put their conservatory over in Boston.
Wow, that's really impressive. You must be
I'm
so
very
proud of this, man.
thankful.
Yes,
Yes.
that's really cool. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And you mentioned Ponchatoula High School, and I promise we're going to get there because that is kind of a beloved common denominator that so many of us share here. Not everybody in town went to high school there, but most of us did, or at least most of us that have been around a while. And I think people enjoy talking about their days at PHS, whether the football team was good or bad. Lord knows we weren't winning state championships in multiple sports and things like that, like we do now with the girls and boys basketball teams. But we all loved it and seemed to have fun. But before we get there, talk about your childhood. What was it like to grow up in your family with this legacy in the church, in the classroom? What was that like for you growing up here?
Growing up, I had first of all, I'm the absolute youngest of six siblings. My mom and my dad both were educators. My mother, she originally was like a nurse or a nurse's assistant in the hospitals. And then by the time I came along and was born, she actually served as a paraprofessional in the school system. My dad, he in of himself, he was a principal by the time I was born. So I have five older siblings ahead of me. But when I came into the picture, that's when he became a principal. The beauty of this is that the legacy that was instilled in us, both spiritual as well as educational, and I will stem more from the educational at this particular time, is my dad had multiple degrees, and that was the driving force that also caused each of us to also have multiple degrees as well. He started off with his GED and went into the military. He
Wow.
served into the Army. And from the Army, he went on to Southern University, where he received his bachelor's. And then he went to Jackson State University, and where he received his master's. And then he continued his terminal doctorate or specialist degree at Southeastern. So right here at Southeastern in the archives, you can look up his thesis or his dissertation because it is archived there with his specialist degree. So he had multiple degrees in that way. Then, of course, he went on and received his Doctor of Divinity. And so that's why he was often called Reverend Doctor Robert
Sure.
L.
Wow.
Smith.
What an
Yes,
amazing and well-rounded education, from
yes,
roots in HBCU to our own
yes,
local university that we love, Southeastern, to
yes,
the divinity side of things. Wow,
yes,
that's amazing. So, and I love the origin story of the GED because that provides such an inspiration. You know,
yes,
some of us are born on third base. My parents are both highly educated, and I was blessed to go to great schools like Tulane, and it kind of came easy to me. And also, my
yes,
parents made it easy, and paid for what I need paid for, and etc. But to hear of a man to come from a GED, to pull himself up by the bootstraps through military service, hard work, grit, and you can tell me much more. Lord knows the Lord's grace more than anything.
yes,
But wow, to get all those degrees, and not only to do that for himself, but to inspire all these other educators in the family that came after him,
yes,
including those two young men that you mentioned at the top of the program.
yes.
That's really special. That's
That
cool.
That is awesome. And that was the beauty for me because of my characteristics and upbringing. I was able to instill that in both of my sons. Those are the only two that I have, and both of them were able to follow in those same footsteps ultimately from my dad to me to them. So it's almost like it became generational, and that's what it should have become. So it's actually generational that I was able to instill these morals and these principles as well as these values into them as well.
Well, I love that you share that because the multi-generational aspect is an important one. And both in the getting there, but the example that you set, and to show somebody the possibility of what can be done. My wife and my dad and I went to St. Joseph's School today to have lunch with my second grader, and my second grader thought it was so neat that his papa went to the same school, 70 years ago. And Papa's
Wow.
out there showing them, hey, there wasn't a gym here. Like, you have this nice air conditioned hardwood floored gym. We played on dirt courts over there, and but it's neat. I think each generation, if we are blessed with parents and grandparents that can inspire us and show the way, that's such a big deal. Um, Being the baby in a house of six to two educator parents like yours, what was that like? Because you mentioned you came along late. Dad's already a
Yeah.
principal. What's the age gap, say, from oldest to youngest, and what's that dynamic like being one of six and the
Um,
youngest dad?
it was a tremendous age gap because when I was born, my oldest brother, who is now passed on, along with my parents and then another older sister, he was actually entering college when I was born. So that gives you an idea
Wow.
of the age gap from the oldest to the youngest. And then even within us, the youngest person before I came along, she was 10 years older than my brother, who's still working in the school system. And then I came along a few years later. So there was a tremendous age gap to the point where the older siblings always said that, I was part of the next generation. So it was
Yeah.
kind of hilarious. It was kind of funny, but, it was that particular age gap.
But that's relatable. We don't have as many children. I'm the second of four boys, but our oldest is 18 years older than the youngest.
Mhm.
And thankfully now they're very close. So although they didn't really grow up in the same house, my older brother and my youngest brother, you're right. It's capable to kind of be siblings but different generations at the same time. It's an interesting
Yeah.
dynamic. Let me throw in some comments here because we have a couple of the finest men in Ponchatoula who are on here singing your praises, and I want to share that with you,
I
Felicia.
receive.
First, we have our great clerk of court, Gary Stanga. Gary, thank you for tuning in. Gary has been interviewed on the show, and his interview's one of the best we've had. But
Yes.
he says you do a fabulous job. And Gary, of course, I agree. What's the old saying? It takes one to know one. Gary does a fabulous job as our clerk of
Yes,
court.
he
I see
does.
that as a guy who files things in his court. And we appreciate you doing that up there, Gary, carrying on your best friend Julian's legacy, by taking over for him. And thank you for tuning in. But Gary's not alone. My good buddy Marshall Graves, fresh off his birthday. Marshall, I'm not going to share your age with everybody. You don't have quite as many grays in the beard as I do, but we're not spring chickens anymore. But Marshall says, Felicia, that you are a great motivator and a genuine loving person. You always put action behind your words. And Marshall, thank you for that, because I don't know the quote from the scripture like the two of you would about words without action, but I know it's in the book of James. Marshall, you can tighten me up after this about the action being required, but tell me about that, Felicia. Have you always been a woman of action? Because we see so many people in the world, especially leaders, when good things are happening. STEM Cafe comes to mind. Everybody likes to talk a good game. And when something special happens, like this STEM Cafe y'all did at Part a few weeks ago, a lot of people like to take credit, get out there chirping. But like Marshall says, you put action behind your words. And that's how these events happen in the first place. And is that something you've kind of always done, or what are your feelings about that?
Yes. First of all, thank you all for those beautiful comments. I truly appreciate them. Yes, I am a person of action, and above all, I'm a person of my word. If I say that I'm going to do something, then I'm going to do it. Why? Because it reflects my character. Yes, I did have strong upbringing with my parents, and I am so grateful for the things that they instilled into me. But however, ultimately, it is my character and my personality that is
Right.
going to be on display. So the only way your character and personality is on display, it has to come from the inside to the
Right.
outside. So exactly what I tell you I'm going to do, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it with a spirit of excellence where not only I can see it, but everyone else can not only see it, but they can feel it. Very recently, I had called someone very close to me. He's a doctor of profession at Southeastern. And I asked him, I said, give me a little bit of feedback. He said, one thing about you, Felicia, and this was literally earlier this week, a few days ago. He said, you do things from your heart. And I said, you know what? If you say nothing else to me today, that sticks. And that's the key. You have to be a heart person. You have to be an inward person. You have to have it come from the inside out. So yes, character on display is very important. Action on display is very important. And just to back up, even my sons, they received like a 3-foot award in their graduating year from Ponchatoula High, and it was the character award. So as a parent, that spoke volumes to me. So when
Yes.
somebody else can recognize character and see it on you and speak of it and then recognize you for it, that is the awesomeness within
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I like to take that notion of character on display, action on display that you shared, and you mentioned PHS and your sons and graduating and being recognized for that and awarded for that. When you think back to, and I'm going to mention PHS, but if there's somebody at one of the other lower schools in Ponchatoula, by all means, refer to them. But when you think back to your own education as a student, certainly you got it from your own home. We talked about your father, your mother, your siblings, but do you think of any teachers that you had, coaches maybe that you had, you know, but who inspired you by putting your own character on display and putting action behind their words back when you were just a student, kind of learning your own way here in Ponchatoula?
The beauty of that is that I really thought, and I thought I could single out one teacher or two maybe. However, for me, I had so many influential teachers throughout my elementary school years, junior high, as well as high school. And the reason that they probably were more impactful because, again, family of educators, they knew me before I got to them. So when I got to them, it was kind of like you already knew what you had to do. And then not only did you do it, but they expected a certain level of leadership from me. So I had several
Mhm.
people that I could technically name, but one thing I will like to mention is like Mr. Virgil Allen because he was my
Yes.
principal at
Mine too.
Ponchatoula High
Great name.
School, and his one of his sons had graduated. He and I were classmates, and so he was my principal at Ponchatoula High. And then a few years later, he was
Yeah.
my superintendent. So
That's
that was
great.
love in and of
Yeah.
itself because again, they were so interconnected with
Sure.
me, but mainly with my parents because of the
Right.
educational arena. So it's kind of like you knew that you had to do what you had to do, and then they were expecting that leadership to come up out of you. And so because of that, that's what helped me to continue to mold and grow, not only in the home, but also in the places that I was in.
That's a great share. And thank you for mentioning Mr. Allen. He was my principal too. I was blessed to be in his last graduating class at PHS before he moved on, as you said, to be the superintendent. But it was special to have him as our principal. He and my dad played high school football together. And, I kind of
Wow.
grew up looking up to him and other members of his family my whole life. And you mentioned his sons. His son David was in my class, who's now a doctor
Yes.
and was just a great fellow to be around. So another wonderful Ponchatoula family rooted in education like yours. I want to thank my pal Marshall. I knew, we Catholics are not as quick on the trigger or as accurate in our scripture. But I was bumping around the right book at least there, Marshall. But thank you for sharing this. Yeah, faith and works. Yeah, wonderful quote there from the scripture, James 2:18. And I knew if I called on my other preacher buddy there that he would come through, and he did. Strader Dufresh, Ceatat. Speaking of old schoolmates, was a year
Yes.
behind me at PHS and a wonderful educator like you. And she says that this is a wonderful interview. She calls you a friend and says, "Yes,
Yes.
Felicia, you are all heart in everything you do." And so she's throwing some love your way. And Strader, we thank you for sharing that and for tuning in. I should have probably mentioned, Felicia, that in addition to Gary, who I said earlier has been on the show, Marshall, Strader, and Mr. Allen have all been interviewed here like
Wow.
you.
Yes.
So if folks are watching and they hear about them and they like them and want to see more, all of our interviews are cataloged on our Facebook page. Just look for videos under ponchatoula.com and you can catch up with those guys. But thank you, Strader, for chiming in. We are here with Felicia Elzy talking about her childhood in Ponchatoula. We are getting to her becoming an educator. We've been kind of talking about the build up to that and the family history of education and her own education. Um, let's talk now post kind of PHS era. What was the next chapter for you as you went about your journey to get where you are today?
Well, it was almost like an automatic being the absolute youngest. You get to see a lot of things that go on, and so you tend to do the perfected versions of your former siblings as they were growing up. But the main thing that I automatically knew, it was just like an automatic for me that I was going to college. It's almost like it was hands down. It wasn't optional. It wasn't any of that. It wasn't any more thought put to it. The only thing I had to do was put in my admissions. And so it was so funny. I can remember putting in at a few colleges, namely Southern and
Yeah,
Southeastern. And so my dad at the time, he was just kind of like, just smiling as if he knew where I was going. It's like, oh, you could put in where you want to go, but you're
right.
going right here to Southeastern, type of thing.
Well,
And he said it without saying it. So the beauty of it is that I did receive my bachelor's, my master's, as well as some of my plus 30 hours from Southeastern. I did start the doctoral program, but I did withdraw from that program because I had some other great things going on at the time, and I
Right.
knew that I could not give it the time and attention that it was going to need to do the research and so on and so forth. And I was fine with that because I had many certifications that were added to my license through Louisiana. So I was good. It's like a master's plus 30
Masters
that
plus
the state of
30. Yeah.
Louisiana, yeah, recognizes, you know,
Yeah.
and some of those hours also came from the University of Louisiana at Monroe. And the reason I was able to do them because, you know, they started online at the
Mhm.
time. So of course I did a few classes online to receive my plus 30, as well as other certifications such as principal supervisor and child welfare and attendance.
Well, online education's been such a blessing because it's helped folks, to pursue education they could have probably never otherwise gotten.
Yes.
I think we're blessed to be right next to a world-class university in Southeastern, and so we can ride right down there and go to class if we need to, but most folks are not. But I look at
Yes.
my brother Bree; he got his master's degree online. My nephew Colin, so many people, employees of mine have gotten their MBAs. It's a wonderful opportunity. But I'm glad you're giving that the props to Southeastern because it's funny. I
Yes.
think of my two little boys, Brandy and I, like you, are big on education. She's got a
Yes.
master's degree like you do. I'm from a family where four boys, three of us became lawyers and got a JD degree, and the chief of police brother has a master's.
Yes.
And my mom got her master's at Southeastern, like you. But wherever we go on vacation, we like to tour colleges. And even though my boys are only 5 and 7, we show them and we talk about them. So I've taken them to Tulane, which is my alma mater. Brandy's taken them to Southeastern, where she went. We both went to grad school at LSU, so we've been there. But even places far away. This summer we went to London and Paris for vacation. So they saw the Sorbonne in Paris, and we did a day trip down to Oxford in England. But wherever we go, we ask them, "Hey, do you like it? You think you want to come here one day?" And it's always a flat nope. We want to go to Southeastern, Dad. they, they
Yes.
they love it. They love the friendship circle and the lion out there, and that's where they go to speech camp. And so it's kind of cool to see that Southeastern get chosen
Yes.
over all the places we've been. From West Coast to East Coast, you name it. But that's neat. So education's a big priority. You go and get a heck of a lot of it, right? And it
Yes.
sounds like you kind of knew or felt this calling to educate the next generation of people around here from an early age, presumably based on watching your family do it and learning
Yes.
that. What's it like going from the kind of baby sister in a family of educators, the
Definitely.
daughter of educators, to enter in the fray? Because one thing about a career in education is you get thrown to the wolves at a very young age.
Yes.
Doctors, lawyers, we don't gray out before they throw us to the wolves, but we're like 25, 26, or older before we, but teachers go right at it. Here's your class. Good luck. What was that transition like for you from student to teacher?
Um, from student to teacher, the beauty of that is that we were very well prepared. Southeastern offered what was called methods courses, so you spent about a year and a half to 2 years doing methods courses in every subject in the schools, public school as well as private schools, whatever is available at that particular time. So the preparation was there. However, actually getting hired into the school system, you're absolutely correct. It's kind of like, here you go, here's your classroom, and these are your students. And
Right.
so when you got to that point, again, I enjoyed it. I loved it. It was a hard thing. So it was with ease that I stepped into it, not only because of my upbringing, because it was actually a part of my calling. So therefore, in that being a part of my calling, my first year teaching was actually where I did my student teaching, which was at Champ Cooper Schools. And so after I finished student teaching that semester and graduated, they were like, we want you, you know what I'm saying? And so it was so funny because other schools were like, we want, they were like, no, you can't have her, she's staying with us. And so and I was like, and I was happy because that
Yeah.
spoke volumes when you have
Right.
several student teachers alongside of you and they're only hiring for one and you the
Yeah.
person that they hire. So it did speak volumes. And some may remember Mr. Zahn, he's been passed on
Yeah.
for many years, but he was the principal during that
Principal.
particular time.
Right.
And so to do my first year at Champ Cooper and then move into the other schools to teach as well as be administrator, I was like literally all over the parish, and that's what created the diversity for me. I had the opportunity to teach all students from regular education to students that were in the alternative area. I was also the educational leader at Florida Parish's Juvenile Detention Center. So I had the whole spectrum literally as far as teaching. And I have to add this. My dad, when he started his teaching career in Tangipahoa Hope Parish school system, he started at O.W. Dillon when it was a high school. It was not Kentwood High. It was O.W. Dillon High that many years ago. So, and he ended his career as a principal at Midway Elementary right here in the
Mm-hmm.
Albany.
It's Albany.
So the thing I want to connect there is that I had the opportunity to be the assistant principal, the only one at O.W. Dillon of my siblings, in that regard. So I was
Yeah.
able to be an assistant principal at the school that he started at in the parish. And then I was able to end my educational career happily at Midway as the assistant
Wow.
principal. So that was the beauty, that I was the one sibling that actually was in both places where he started and where he ended. So that was another connection that a lot of people don't know about.
That's a super special connection. That's really
Yes.
neat. It's funny you kind of alluded to the fact that you were recruited or sought after when you got out of
Yes.
school, and it kind of reminds me. Marshall was commenting earlier, being the sixth, Elzy kid, all the great educators that came along before you. You're kind of a known commodity, right? I mean, there's always a chance. Every kid's different. And nobody knows that better than the educator.
Right.
But there's also a predictive pattern of this family is either with it or not. And it's kind of like Marshall. I grew up coaching. Now he and I coach together. And but once upon a time when his oldest boy, I was coaching against him, getting our butt kicked. But it's like I think after watching little Marshall, Amara, Alan Graves, of course, now he's 6'9", it's easy to spot, but it's
I
like
know.
everybody wants a Graves kid. I don't need to know how tall he is or just let me see that last name. I'll take him. At the draft,
Yes.
people will be fighting over him. And in the education world, you were kind of the recipient of a similar deal. So, and then of course you lived up to that, kind of like LeBron James, who's now in year 21 of playing basketball.
Yes.
He all he did was live up to the hype, unlike any player ever. By giving us 21 great years. So that's really cool to think that you could succeed like that in your career. And I applaud it, and I thank you, because education is tough. I see it every day when my wife comes home as a school counselor, talking about the challenges that are now presented at Ponchatoula Junior High, and many other friends who are teaching, like Strader, who when she was in the classroom, would share that with me. But let's talk about the things you've done since then, if you don't mind, because I see you out in the community
Yes.
making an impact on so many fronts. And we're going to ask you about your ministry later and your Christian
Okay.
faith. You talked about that earlier, and we're not going to skip it. But let's talk about things like the Educators Clubhouse, the STEM Cafe that you were part of putting on, that was such a huge success here at the Ponchatoula Area Recreation District Park recently. Tell us about all these things that you're into once you formally retired from, being a principal at Midway.
Okay. First thing, my philosophy, you could say that this is a Felicia Elzy quote: true leadership never truly retires.
I
So
love it.
therefore, it was just in me, birthed in me to do more. And so I wanted to do an outreach into the community. The Educators Clubhouse is actually umbrellaed under the Leading Command Ministries. It came into play because it gives me an opportunity to reach our community through resources, through activities, and then they're all planned around families. It's from youth of all ages. It is for adults. It's for all communities. So sometimes I have items set up in Ponchatoula, but I've also had things set up in Hammond and other places. So it's for all communities. So even though it may be set in Ponchatoula or Hammond, all are welcome and it is free. The reason I'm able to bring it to the communities for free is because I have partners that believe in what I do and they are part of the vision and they see what I'm doing and they of course know my character and they know my heart is in it. So they partner with me, and with that partnership, I take those funds or those seed gifts and I use them toward what we're trying to do. Now, the successful STEM Cafe that we recently had here in Ponchatoula, I have to say it, I will say it again, and I've said it before, it was the first ever STEM Cafe in Ponchatoula. Prior to that, the Educators Clubhouse had the youth extravaganza, and it was held at the Lions Club. And I had some of the brain STEM activities to come there from the same source of North Shore. And so some of the activities were there, but then the idea came for STEM Cafe. It originated back in earlier part of this year, around February. Um, Me and the doctor, we often talked, and I was on the board for North Shore prior to COVID, but we always stayed connected. We'll go have coffee, at least once a year and try to catch up. And then also they would invite me in to say, hey, come help out to do this, or are you available? And I will be readily available. So anyway, this past February, STEM Cafe came up because they were like, boy, we would love to be in Ponchatoula. And so, of course, I perked up, and I said, Ponchatoula? I said, I can help you with that. And so afterwards, I started making my connections, of course, with PAR, because they need a huge place to set up all of these wonderful activities. Because again, it is for all ages and adults as well, and then it's free. So I said, hey, I have connections at PAR. I've done a couple of events there. I say, let's get a date. So I gave them a date. I did all of that. Then what happened in Southeastern? The cyber attack. So they were down for a while, and I kind of
Right.
stepped back because I made the connection for them to talk with who they needed to talk with. And so, but after everything got back rolling, that's when they talked, but then they couldn't do it without the Leading Command Ministries, the Educator Clubhouse. And PAR was like, well, we can do this part, but you got to have this part. And so they said, well, maybe Leading Command Ministries can do it. And I said, yes, Leading Command Ministries can do it. And it was because of the support of the partners' seed gifts that we were able to make this happen. So when you see Leading Command Ministries and the Educator Clubhouse, if you were a partner with us, you're actually seeing yourself in action.
Yeah.
So it goes beyond me, it goes to us. I'm more of a we than a me.
I love that phrase, that attitude. And you may be the tip of the spear, but I love that you share the credit, with folks behind you that are helping drive
Yes.
forward that great progress. And I can tell you, as the parent of a kid who participated, it was phenomenal. And it was great to see this collection of folks. You mentioned the university, Dr. Wheat, Pard, great facilities, one and all. Folks like Hammond Robotics that got involved. And, my older boy is really into STEM stuff, and he had done robotics Astro Camp that summer. So he was doing, just he still loves looking at the little videos from on my phone of him shooting a rocket in one instance, controlling a robot in another, using a slingshot to knock down pins. There were so many things he learned about science, and y'all did a great job of making it fun. It was a first class safe operation. You could go there. You didn't have to stand by your kid the whole time because you were worried about any kind of chaos. It was super well organized. So I thank you for that. I'm hopeful it's something that could come back here. And I want to let parents know that are watching, if you've got a young one, and my kid was 7 when he went, and his best pal's the same age, and I know that his friends' parents felt the same way. It was just a blast. It was educational. It was
Yes.
100% a class act. And so, to Leading Command Ministries, the Educators Clubhouse, and everybody else involved, I say thank you on behalf of us parents. I want to share a wonderful quote here from Melanie Mulkey. So she runs the pathology and communication disorders clinic at Southeastern, and they take great care of my two boys, both of which who have speech issues. But she says she's so glad she tuned into this wonderful interview, and she thanks you, Felicia, for using your gifts to bless children. And Melanie, thank you for sharing that. Again, I'll use the phrase, it takes one to know one. Melanie and her colleagues in speech and language disorders, they have made such an impact on the life of my family and my boys. They're just incredible. We schedule our whole summer around when Southeastern Speech Camp is going to be, because my kids love it, and they've helped us so much. And right now they're taking their talents on the road. They're going to go down to Turks and Caicos. We think of Turks and Caicos as paradise. You know, my brother went on his honeymoon there, and it's gorgeous, and they're zillionaires with yachts and all this going on. But the people of those islands, like most Caribbean islands, are typically very poor, and they're totally under-resourced. They don't have speech language pathologists and therapists down there. So Melanie's got her gang. And I think, Melanie, I saw that you and your team met within this week for your planning meeting. And I'm glad to see you guys getting that going. It's a wonderful program. And so thank you for taking care of our kids right here in our backyard, and now the far needier kids kind of across the globe, if you will. So, folks, we're here with Felicia Elzy. We're talking about great things she's doing now, great things she's done, her career, her family. Let's talk about, where all this comes from, the important thing in your life, which is your faith and what God's given you. You mentioned earlier your family's bedrock core faith, what you kind of inherited, if you will, or learned from your parents. And of course, you've developed your own. But talk about the role of Jesus in your life. Talk about your faith and where it comes from. And eventually we'll get to kind of what you're doing now in your ministry beyond what you've told us about.
Okay, just like I started off earlier saying that I believe that I was born into education, I feel like I was born into the ministry because, again, my dad, along with having the role of a principal in our local area, he also was a pastor for many years. So in my household growing up, I'm getting both at the same time. So again, when I came along, the time I was born, he had become principal. And then not too long after, maybe a year or two later, he was very strong in ministry. And then he started pastoring the church. So I had both the spiritual legacy left to me as well as the natural legacy. So as he went on to get a doctorate in theology, somewhatly I have a doctorate as well, because I did 2 years of ministry school and graduated from Ever Increasing Word Training Center, and whom I'm under the leadership of Apostle and Pastor Dr. Leroy Thompson Sr., and that is the training center in which I attended. It was a real training center where you had to study, you had to attend classes, you had to take quizzes, you had to take tests. And for the whole 2 years, I did maintain a 4.0 the whole 2 years in ministry school. So ministry school simply helped to prepare me for, again, the calling that is on my life. So yes, I do minister, I do evangelize, and then ultimately I did go to churches. I did a 3-day revival back in 2020, right prior, it was a week before COVID hit. And I said, wow, God's timing, because the word that went forth in that 3-day revival right here in Ponchatoula was powerful and on point. And I say, when I speak and when I minister, whether the people are there or not, I'm actually speaking into the atmosphere, because we are spiritual beings, and of course the Holy Spirit does reside on the inside of me. So when I speak out, we're actually speaking all of these great things of God, the oracles of God, into the atmosphere, not only over our personal lives, but over our families, over our children. And that leads into where Leading Command Ministries was birthed, and why I have the other component. A lot of people are associated with the community give backs, the STEM cafes, and I absolutely love it. But the other part of Leading Command Ministry, it is the word. It is based on ministry. And so there's a platform that I use for it to actually minister and evangelize. And one of them is what's called Youth Extravaganza Ministry. And it is ministry again for the whole family. So when you see youth, don't take it out of context. It's for everybody because the
Right.
word is for everybody.
Of course. Yeah, that's great. I just love to hear all the good you're doing there. It's wonderful. You know, you've shared a lot of wisdom and guidance with us throughout the course of this interview. And it's clear that you have made an incredible impact on the people that you minister to, that you taught, that you administer, that you were the administrator for, when you moved up to that level. Let's talk about young people. And I'm not talking about the student level young person anymore, but rather maybe the student teacher young person, the young teacher young person, people that see all that you're doing in the community, but are just getting started and maybe want to be like you one day. What words of advice might you give to the next generation based on things you've learned, successes you've had, pitfalls? We've all had failures, but what would you share with a young person who's coming up and kind of wants to be like you?
You have to stay true to yourself. What do I mean by that? I would say that to the person coming up, like a young teacher or so on, or even to my younger self, continue to be true and truthful to yourself because there will be experiences that will come up. And when they come up, the truth that resides on the inside of you will help you to make the best decision possible as you go through certain experiences and as you go through life. The other thing I would like to say is that once a leader, you're always a leader. I heard that said from another previous leader, and it stayed with me. So, in other words, I can go home and I'm in a restful, safe
Mhm.
place. But at the same time, if you get a call from a teacher in the middle of the night or a friend or someone that needs your help or need to talk with them, your leadership automatically kicks in for that person. Also, in going to a regular football game, just to relax and have a good time, you're still in the role of a leader. So you have to carry yourself accordingly. So, if the last thing I would have to say, and I hope it's not the last, but another thing I would say, and I'll pause, is that and this is a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., and forgive me if I miss a syllable or a word, but he pretty much was saying, run. And if you can't run, you walk. And if you feel like you can't walk, then you crawl. Whatever you do, you keep moving.
Moving. Yeah, that's a wonderful message. And I thank you for sharing that. So how can people reach you? So if people are watching this interview, I mean, obviously Strader and Gary and Marshall already know you, but people that are watching that are moved, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I don't mind sharing my email as well as my mobile number. My email, you can reach me at nowfaithis, the number 345 at yahoo.com. And you can also reach me at 985-662-6741. The only thing about my mobile phone is that it will, if you don't mind, text me first so I can save your number. Because if it's a number that I don't recognize, leave a voicemail or send me a text message. Otherwise, I won't be able to contact you. I would
Right.
think, seriously, I would
Hey,
think it's
no,
spam.
nobody's picking up this time of
Yeah,
year. You got
right.
politicians texting you. You got
The,
spam. I mean, yeah, I had one come in during the show. It was spam. I had to mute my phone while you were talking. So,
yeah.
yeah, that's
And
great.
then, of course, we got Facebook Messenger, that you
Right.
can always
Yeah,
find me on
it's
at
great.
Felicia Elzy. And then, of
Uh-huh.
course, I have the two groups, the Educator Clubhouse group that's on
Mhm.
Facebook, as well as Leading
Right.
Command Ministries group that's also on Facebook. So send me a friend request or get a, ask to join a group so I
Yeah.
can hit, yeah, that you welcome to join those groups as well.
So lots of ways to contact you. We've posted your email and phone number here. It's in the comments, folks, which you can check at any time. But thanks for sharing that. And of course, I know that your groups would welcome donations. That's what makes all this possible. What are
Yes.
other ways people could help you besides the financial? In case folks aren't able to afford to donate to your programs as I have, what are other ways they
Yes.
could help?
And again, I do appreciate you along with all the others that have partnered with me. I'm looking for stronger partnerships in the upcoming months as well as within the next year, because when I have stronger partnerships, if you are happy with what you're seeing now, think about it, there will be more that you will see coming. I'm hoping to do another STEM in the spring. This particular STEM is scheduled to be again next September, but I also want to add another STEM to come up in the spring along with some more things next year. Also, leading command around the springtime, we do a black tie affair on, it's called Royal Black Tie. And the key word is royal because we are royalty. So yes, contact me, get in touch with me. We need those partnerships. We need volunteers. I need support. So if you need me to come to you, I am accessible to help support you. You've heard some of my expertise, and I don't mind giving you help or support with my expertise. But there's no way I'm going to know unless you reach out to me by phone, by messenger, by email, whatever you choose to do. I am available to be of an assistance to you as well and help bring some things to you.
Well, thank you, Felicia. We have shared our producer, Danny Lynn Dennis, who I thank. Danny, I couldn't do any of this without you.
Yes,
She has shared the link
she's
here
great.
to your Leading Command Ministries Facebook page and also the Educators Clubhouse Facebook page. So all of this stuff is in the comments, folks. You can contact Felicia through that. Felicia, I want to thank you for being on the show. We have gone longer than expected because the quality of your content has been incredible. And I thank you for sharing both your time as well as your wisdom and your heart with us. Before we go, if there's anything else on your mind, on your heart, anything at all you'd like to talk about, please take a moment to do that.
At this time, I do appreciate you, Parker, for your partnership, along with the many others that have partnered with this vision and with this mission. And I just want to encourage you again, not only you, but generally speaking, to partner with me because not only do I need support, but I'm here to give support as well. And I want to also thank Danny Lynn as well, along with Jude and other persons here that have been supportive of me coming in and making sure I have water and making sure I was set up. And I'm very thankful for all of those who participated with me in these community events, ministry wise, and of course, in giving back to the communities. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. And Park, I'm very humble and thankful that you had me on with you today. Very
Well,
grateful for this
I couldn't
opportunity.
wait to get you on here, and I'm so excited that you were up for doing it. And I thank you for that. And I want
Yes,
to thank you for giving both Danny Lynn and Jude some props. I think that's the first
yes.
mention Jude's had since he started as our assistant producer on the show. So that's Jude Papillon, great guy. Recently graduated from Tulane, where he was the editor in chief of the school newspaper, the Hullabaloo. Fantastic guy. Danny Lynn has been my right hand woman for years. They're wonderful. We could not do this show without them. And I want to close out with a few more quotes that came in as we were chatting. And this is speaking of great women like you, Felicia. Rhonda Sheridan says you are a great woman and a leader, and she loves you. And Rhonda, it takes one to know one. I've said it a few times on this show, but you are certainly a great woman and a local leader, and we love you and appreciate you, as we do Rachel Lagarde Strohmeyer, who says, "Hey," she says, "you're awesome. God bless you." The wonderful women we have here in Ponchatoula to lead us, and inspire us, and support us. It's really special. It's part of what makes our community so great. So, once again, and for the final time, I thank Felicia Elzy, this amazing, highly educated, highly energetic woman. Felicia, you got something else to say? Go for
Just
it.
one more tad
Yeah,
bit because when Rhonda came on, it just reminded me to share 30 seconds.
go
I was
for it.
telling you that I was thankful for being a part of the North Shore STEM Coalition Board, but I'm also grateful to have been the first treasurer of the Twin Steeples board here in Ponchatoula. So that spoke volumes as well. I was on the ground floor getting that up and going. And I was really blessed. I mean, when I say first treasurer, we were in the trenches because I had to like write checks at 9 o'clock
Right,
at
right.
night, you know, so the construction people could get paid. So I am so grateful to see what it is doing as well. So I was just very thankful to be on the ground floor of that as well, right
Yeah.
here in our own town of Ponchatoula.
Yeah, that's such a blessing. And Rhonda and all the board members have done a phenomenal job. You know, Harry Gabriel, I know you're up in heaven smiling down on us, and we want to thank you for that vision of Twin Steeples. It's incredible. And it takes a village. Without you being
Yes.
the treasurer, the lady holding the bank, we couldn't be there, because you're right. It was a heck
Yes.
of a construction project from
I
moving
did it for
purchase.
2 years, 21
Yeah.
to 23, but I was very grateful for that opportunity.
It was a lot easier for me to cut one check to support that project than for you to deal with all of that money coming in and out. So we thank you for that. So, folks, for those of us that stayed with us here for a full 50 minutes, a long interview, we thank you. Ponchatoula Live will be back next week at the same time. And to Felicia Elzy, our fantastic guest, we say thank you for sharing your time and sharing yourself.
Sir.
Y'all
God
have
bless
a great
you.
one. God bless.
I receive.